Starting your own podcast isn't the only way to reach new clients. Being a guest on another podcast can actually be just as powerful. For female service providers, being a podcast guest is a great way to show your skills, connect with new people, and book more clients. So, let's break down how podcast guesting can actually help you grow your business. Number one, reach new clients and grow your audience. Being on a podcast is like getting a personal invite to someone else's audience. It's an easy way to reach new people who may need your services. Get in front of a new audience. By joining other podcasts, you can speak directly to listeners who already trust the host. It's like getting a warm introduction. Build trust fast. People are more likely to reach out to you if they hear you speak and share your expertise, and it makes you more real and relatable. Share clear next steps. At the end of your guest spot, you need to invite listeners to join your email list by downloading a free guide. This way, you're giving something free, and the audience will want that something free and sign up for your email list where you can then nurture them moving forward. Two, show the real deal in your field. When you speak on a podcast, you get a chance to show off what you know. This helps potential clients see you as an expert that they can trust. Share best tips. Share stories, client wins, or easy to follow advice. Make what you're talking and sharing about be very actionable that lets the audience be able to get that quick win. This lets listeners see how you can solve their problems. Build a real connection. Podcasts let you speak in your own voice, and your voice is very powerful and it can imply trust because it's your voice. This makes you more relatable and memorable, and people feel like they can really get to know you. Boost credibility. Being featured on podcasts shows that you're a trusted expert. You can share the podcast episode on your social media, your website, or really everywhere to show that you know your stuff. Number three, how to start being a podcast guest. If you're excited to try podcast guesting, here's how you can get started. Find the right podcasts. Look for shows that have your target audience in mind. So, my target audience is female service providers. If I get invited, and I have been invited to a podcast that the audience is everybody or the audience is product companies or something like that, I have said no because I want to get in front of my ideal client. You really want to speak to listeners who would be interested in your services, right? Pitch yourself. Send a short personal message to the podcast host. Let them know that you can help their audience and why you'd be a great guest. Just some advice on how I've been a guest on podcasts. What I will do if I find a podcast through research that they actually have my ideal audience, I will tend to follow that podcast, either the host or the podcast or both, liking and commenting on their information. Number one, it's a way for me to really make sure that it's the right podcast for me. But secondly, it shows that I've done some work and due diligence. Next, I'm going to listen to a couple different podcast episodes, and then I'm going to go ahead and write that letter to pitch myself. And I'm always going to start with episode number so and so, and 139 with the guest this, or when you talked about this, I've really found valuable and I took the advice and this is the results I got, or something, right? You want to make sure that they know that you actually have listened to the podcast. As a podcast host, when I get a pitch, somebody pitching themselves and they're men, and our podcast is for women by women, I know instantly that they haven't really listened to the podcast. Make sure that you do your research first. Prepare for the interview. Do a little homework on the podcast and its listeners. Be ready with a few key points or stories to share because stories are very powerful. And don't forget to have a special offer, that freebie for them, ready to go and the link sent to the podcast host so that they can put it in the show notes. Tip number 4, turn podcast guesting into clients. Guest spots are just the beginning. Here's how to get even more out of each appearance. Create a special offer. Share a free guide, a discount, or other exclusive offer to get listeners to connect with you. Promote your episodes. Once the episode is live, share it on all your social medias, your blog, your website, and also your email list to reach even more people. And don't just share it once. Share it multiple times. I have been a guest on other podcasts and I share it throughout the year, like 4 times a year usually. And one thing that has helped with is I have had a podcast host reach out to me and say, your podcast episode was one of the most listened to in this quarter, was the most listened to of the whole year, and we'd like to have you back on the podcast. That's amazing. I shared it with all of my followers. I shared it on my email list. I share it on a podcast on my website that shows all the places that I've been featured. And I've even created a Spotify playlist for all of my appearances on other podcasts, which I also include when I send a pitch to, or I should say, when my team sends a pitch to a podcast host so that they can hear the other episodes I was on. Repurpose the content. Use the podcast episode for social media posts, blog content, or even email newsletters. This way, you're going to get more out of each guest spot. Tip number 5, should you guest on a podcast or start your own? Right? Last week, we talked about starting your own podcast as a way to get more clients. This week, we're talking about how to be a guest on a podcast to get more clients. So if you're not sure if you should start your own podcast or just guest on other podcasts, here's a quick snapshot for you to know. Guesting benefits. There's no need to spend time or money on gear. It's easier to get started. You just literally show up and speak. You can also reach new audiences faster. The benefits of hosting a podcast: you're in control of everything. You build a loyal group of listeners who come back for more time and time again. And you get to dive deep into the topics that you really care about. So start booking more clients by being a podcast guest. Being a guest on a podcast is fun. Yes, it can be really nerve-wracking, but as long as you have your notes up on the screen with the Zoom or whatever platform you're on recording the actual podcast, and you have your notes, have a story ready, have tips that you want to share, that kind of thing. When you have that, it gives you a little bit more confidence and less nervousness, but it is and can be nervous to be a guest on a podcast, but it is fun once you do it. It's an easy way to get in front of new clients. It also helps you to share your story, show your experience, show the human side of you, and connect with people who are ready to book your services. Are you ready to get started? Start pitching to podcasts that fit your niche and has your ideal audience, and watch how it can help you grow your business. Have a great day. See you next week.